You know, it's funny because I've done a number of interviews with people and similar stories where there was something that made that happen, that trigger. And to see that trigger put you in a position now to help thousands of people in front of you at the Exos facility, but then hundreds of thousands of people who listen to you present and really are influenced by what you're putting online. That's amazing. Like that's legacy stuff.
Yeah.
Right? That's legacy stuff. Like, can we make somebody faster by a tenth of a second? Sure. But it's those legacy things where you can now infiltrate into so many more populations that's cool that one little trigger, look what it's done.
Yeah, and I think for everyone listening, having that story, you'll find it somewhere in your life is powerful, and share that story with others. Because just like we're doing now, that can then, for some people, be the trigger that launches them into their career.
You never know who you're affecting.
Absolutely.
And how or why. Okay, so you fell in love with it.
Yep.
Now, what was your next step as far as becoming a professional?
Yeah. So it's quite interesting. Before I ever knew who Mark Verstegen was and where Athletes Performance was and what they did in this industry, I had a singular focus going into Oregon State University. I wanted to be pre-med. I wanted to become an orthopedic surgeon. But I wanted to get my degree in exercise science so that I could understand the full continuum of care. Because I knew even at 18, I didn't want to just be the person doing the surgery. I wanted to be the person that understand how that surgery needed to connect to the end goal. Right. Now, funny enough, 1 year later, I meet a gentleman by the name of Guido van Rijsegem, and he pulls out Mark Verstegen's first trifold. Shortly after that, I buy the big red Core Performance book, and I realize, oh my goodness, this person is stealing my thoughts, yet they're 20 years old. Who is this person, right? And I'm like, that is where I need to work. And lucky enough, after meeting Guido van Rijsegem and basically having a degree within a degree and working under him through personal training, through what we called Safe Return, working with post-rehab, him getting me into Major League Baseball, doing summer internships, being able to work with the Oregon State baseball team in 2006 that won the national championship. He shepherded all of those experiences while I was getting a degree. And on top of all of that, he pushed me to do a senior project that I did not have to do to evaluate what is now known as the bilateral deficit. So very quickly, I started having these parallel path interests of both strength conditioning, human performance from a coaching perspective, but also a deep-seated passion for coach education, and a lot of that from him. So I basically spent 3 of those 4 years preparing for my internship in 2006 at Athletes Performance. I was scared as could be to do it. I'll never forget, I went there about 6 months before. Mark wasn't there. I dropped off, if you would, kind of a pamphlet with my resume and a number of other accomplishments from the last 3 years. I'll never forget the day. I went home, got on my old Mac computer. I see an email from Mark Verstegen. He says, give my best to Guido, because they're friends. And he said, we would be honored to have you as an intern. Wow. And that's how they did it back then in terms of the intern acceptance. Wow. Came from him. And I teared up. I felt like everything I've been working for is now coming true. And in 2006, I interned. I was supposed to get my master's at the time under Dr. Brent Alvar at ASU. I forwent that because I was hired about a month before the internship was over. And I'll never forget it. They pulled me in the boardroom. Sitting in there are some of the best coaches I know. Darrell Leto, Luke Richardson, who now takes care of the Denver Broncos, Mark Verstegen, Jeff Sassone, our president, a number of other individuals. Mark stands up on the other side of the table, says, Nick, stay humble, stay hungry, welcome to the team. I literally teared up, grown man crying, no problem at all. My dream had come true in that moment. And from 2006 to today, I've been working as hard as I can to prove to Mark and the team that they've made the right decision.
Well, okay, man, that's awesome. Look at the table you're sitting at, right? Darrell, Luke, Mark, Jeff. The table doesn't get any better than that.
It's hard to beat it.
Hard to beat that table. And I always tell my athletes when they go to their team or whatnot, it's one thing to be invited to sit at the table. It's harder to stay at the table. Yes. And to see that you've stayed at the table, but now you're in a position where you're the director of education. I mean, that's obviously, it shows what the Exos vision, how you align with it, how you've impressed Mark throughout the process, and all your hard work and dedication, hungry and humble. To his words, it sounds like you've done it.
Tried to, yes.
So walking in to work for Mark, you have his book, everything like that. There had to be a huge element of anytime you were coaching, anytime you were doing anything, like, oh my gosh, am I screwing up? Oh my gosh, does he watch me? How was that? A little unnerving?
I've never shared this story before, but I'll share it because I think this story is going to be incredibly helpful for all of those looking to get into this field. Especially when we look at late 90s, definitely early 90s, 80s to early 2000s, when it comes to strength and conditioning, there's a bit of a culture about it. And within that culture, there's a process of earning your stripes, right? Putting in the hard work for inevitably your voice to be heard and be leading those athletes or those clients that you're working with. So when I came into Athletes Performance, as you might imagine, 3 years gunning for this, I was excited. I was on the top of the mountain, if you would. But what I didn't do is curb my enthusiasm. And therefore, oftentimes, I would jump in to want to give an answer. I would jump in to want to help an athlete. I would want to advise maybe one of my strength coaches who I was interning under on the most recent research. If not, even burn their ear up, asking them about the most recent research. All from the goodness of my heart.
Absolutely.
Eagerness was pouring through. But one of the strength coaches sat me down and he said, listen, Nick, are you doing all of your work duties, right, on top of your coach? And I said, yes. He's like, then you're not doing enough. He's like, I want to see your work ethic exceed your ability. Now, we all know that you have ability, Nick, and you're letting everyone know about that. But let them find that, right? Keep your eyes open, your ears open, and your mouth shut. Be 3 steps ahead of the coach you're working with that day. And every free moment that you have, seek to find a way to make this facility better than when it was when you walked in. And while it was incredibly difficult to hear those words, knowing that all of my intentions, which aren't always the case, were well placed, I took it as, wow, this person believed in me enough to share what could have been a pretty touchy subject, but do it in a transparent way that was only as harsh as it needed to be, only as harsh as the reality it was. And I flipped it in 2 months. And by the end of that, I had every coach come up to me and say, the transition you were able to make speaks volumes about you, even more so than if you had come in that way, to listen and to upgrade. And the one thing I would say for any young strength coach, personal trainer, get into this field, eyes open, ears open, work ethic exceeds ability, humility is number one, and inevitably, if you are great and hungry at what you do, people will see it, and let them pull it out of you.